this is Tom Christie back in the carving shop and starting a new project. I'll be back on waterfowl now, and we're going to tackle a bird that I haven't done on my channel before, a ruddy duck. And this is going to be a winter plumage ruddy drake. And I've got the pattern drawn, so I'm ready to go on that. I've selected my pieces of wood. This bird is a little unique. It's going to be more of a gunning style bird than a highly decorative paint job and carve. This is going to have an inserted tail. I've got this in kind of a perky position with the tail up in the air. And to make that strong, I've got a piece of cedar we're going to insert in the block. Epoxy that in place, carve the tail out of cedar so it's nice and durable. And so something a little different, but ruddies are a beautiful little bird, perky little butterball, and I'm looking forward to carving one. I haven't carved one in a long time, so this will be good for me. Hopefully you're enjoying my channel. If you are, please hit the subscribe button. The feedback has been great. I really appreciate that show of support. It's totally free, and we'll keep it that way. All right, the shop heater just started up. It's cold in Nebraska, so I'm gonna bring the camera in, talk about what I've done so far, and we'll get going. Thanks for coming back. All right, just a few things to look at before we start cutting the bird out. I've got the pattern drawn, top down, and side profile on my block of Tupelo. And people always ask me what size is the block. This is 9 inches by 5.5 by, say, 3.5 is the body block for this. And just note that since the tail is going to be an insert, I'm going to cut this out and give myself a place to insert that tail. But the body I don't have to worry about in the side or top-down profile other than this slot for the cedar. The head, I've got a block cut to width, and this is 2 1/8 inches wide. So that block is about 4.5 by 2 1/8 by 3 1/4. And this is a piece of 3/4 inch cedar. All right, I'm going to go over to the bandsaw. We'll get the body and the head cut out and then come back. I want to wait to cut the profile on the tail. I've got a pattern that I put together for the tail. But I'm going to put that in place and see about this width before I cut this profile out. Okay, I'm going to start by cutting the side profile and just go at this slowly. And I'm going to try to keep this top piece with the top-down pattern fully intact so that I can tack it back on and use it to cut the top-down profile. So I'm just taking a clean line through here and not trying to bandsaw in a few of the details like that little curvature near the tail. I'm going to come back and pick that up. I'll set this piece aside. We'll use that later. And now I can come back and cut out these details. First, I'm going to clean up this area right as the tail comes up out of the body. There's a little curvature there, so I'm cutting that in. Now I'm going to cut this slot for the cedar tail, and I'm going to make each of these side down cuts first, and just very carefully back out of that. Now I'm going to go at an angle to the corner Get some of that wood out of the way, and notice I'm keeping my hands away from the blade, including taking any scrap pieces out. You don't want to get your fingers anywhere close to that blade. Now I've got that piece. You can use a scrap piece like that to get scrap out of the way. Now I'm going to cut a little clearance here by making multiple cuts because I want to get the width of my bandsaw blade here so I can make this turn and cut that lower section across. So now I can turn my piece of wood and get that angle and finish that cut. Get these pieces of scrap out of the way, and now we can cut this curvature on the rump as it curves up with the tail. I'm just running this video at normal speed so you can see the speed that I'm cutting. Again, using the block to get the scrap out of the way of the blade. Now I'm going to cut this little notch where the cape dives down and meets up with the back of the neck of the bird. So I'll go from this direction, and then I can't make that corner, so I'm going to go from the opposite direction and then cut that out. Now I'll cut the breast profile in front. Okay, we've got the side profile. Now I'm going to tack that piece back on with a few nails, and I can always fill those nail holes later. I've got the piece lined up so that I've got good registration. I'm going to start at the front of the breast here, and I want to make sure I'm not cutting off any of the breast if I don't have precise alignment of this scrap piece. And it looks like I'm lined up pretty well. Just take my time. There's a little bit of an angle change here. Back to where the tail meets the body. Now I can cut around the back, the rump area. I'm just checking to make sure, again, that my registration is good so I'm not cutting off any of that rounded area of the rump. I'm making these angle changes, which are important to the shape of the bird. And now I can finish that cut around the side pockets and up to the breast. I continually repositioning my fingers and hands to keep them out of the way of the blade. Can't be said enough. And that looks good. And I didn't cut off any of the breast profile, so good shape. Now I've got the bed of the saw set at 30-degree angle. And that way I can clip off a little angle across the bottom here because I want to round that side pocket underneath a little without cutting too far underneath. And fair that into the breast there. Same on the other side. This just gets wood out of the way that we don't have to grind off later. And some people choose to do all of this grinding. You do have to be careful on this cut. And on the next cut specifically, I'm just kind of rocking the body through the saw here, keeping the flat edge on the bed. Now on this cut, I've got a freehand a little bit, and you just have to go at this very slowly, keep your hands out of the way in case that blade catches and wants to pull the wood down to the table. You need to keep your hands out of the way. Another quick cut. And then I'm going to shave off just a little bit more carefully. And that's all I need to do on the bandsaw for the body. Now I'm going to cut out the head profile. I've already cut it to the proper width. And I always like to start at the tip of the bill to really make sure I don't cut into the tip of the bill and get that profile right. I always like to leave my line intact when I'm sawing so that when I'm sanding back to the profile and not cutting into the profile at all as I finish the bird. I want to have a little bit of wood to work with because these bandsaw marks need to be removed with grinding and sanding. So we need a little extra wood there to work with. Now I'm going to carefully finish defining the tip of the bill there and then cut this underside carefully. The Ruddy has this unique little curvature at the front of the bill here, so that's important that we don't cut off too much wood there. It looks like I can make this turn by giving myself a little bit of clearance with the blade there, but I'm going to carefully, again, back out and go from the opposite direction here to finish that tight curve at the neck. There we go. All right, we've got the body and the head roughed out. Now I can put the tail in. I've got a center line there. And this will at least give me a shot at where I should cut here, the profile of the tail. If I cut that in, I'm going to end up with a bunch of filler in that area, which there's nothing wrong with that, but I'd rather use wood if I can. So now I know the profile I need to cut on both sides, at least for a start. And you can see originally I had planned to cut back in here, which is going to leave a big wood gap there. Now we'll be rounding that area, but again, at least we're starting with all wood. I'm going to go cut this out on the bandsaw. All right, I've got my blade adjusted, and I'm going to start with these small cuts going in this direction. And I don't think I can make that turn with the blade, so I'm going to go at it from the opposite direction and then meet up with that previous cut. Same thing on this side. I'll make this cut first to that point. And I've got a little bit of a rounded tip on that so that there's just not a sharp point at the tip of the tail that it's going to be fragile. All right. That tail is a lot thicker than it'll end up, but by making it 3/4 of an inch, I can still take some wood off to give the tail some shape and still keep it nice and strong. And we'll carve that in later. Now I just need to cut out a keel for this guy. I'm using 1-inch thick walnut for my keel here, and it's 1.5 inches deep in a vertical direction. And then I'm just cutting it to fit the body lengthwise. While I have the head in the flat here, I'm going to go ahead and use an awl and mark the center of the eye location. And I like to do that on both sides. And drill in both directions just to make sure I hit that mark. So we'll take that over to the drill press. And while I'm over there, I'm going to put a keel anchor line hole in here and also a couple of keel screw holes. I'm going to use a 1/8 inch drill for the eye hole. I drill a small diameter hole just as a guideline, and then I can finalize the position and diameter later. For the anchor line hole and the keel screw holes, I'm using a 1/4 inch drill. All right, we've got all our rough components cut out, and now we can start the carving process. Okay, I think we'll stop session 1 right there. We've got all the components roughed out, ready to carve. So in the next session, we'll start on the head. We'll take a look at some of the build details of a ruddy duck and get the head carved and go from there. Until then, Tom Christie signing out. Good carving to you.